My name is Sarah. I'm a software engineer and a single mom living in Denver, and for as long as I can remember, I have been the one to quietly hold our family together without complaint. For my son Leo's birthday, I wanted to do something truly special, so I planned a party at his favorite place in the entire world, the local arcade and pizza parlor. I mailed the invitations, received solid confirmations from my parents and my brother, and even sent them a reminder text the day before. But when the party began, they were nowhere to be found. There was no phone call, no text with an apology, just a glaringly empty corner where they were supposed to be. My son gazed up at me, his eyes filled with a maturity that shattered my heart, and he said, "It's okay, Mommy. Just you and me is perfect." A crack formed deep within my soul, but I fought back the tears and managed to smile for his sake. A short time later, my phone vibrated. It was a text from my mother. There was no apology for ghosting her own grandson's birthday party. Instead, it was a demand: $2,000 per person to attend my brother's upcoming wedding at a luxurious Denver hotel. The audacity of it sent a wave of hot anger rushing through me. They couldn't find an hour for my son, but they expected me to help finance their celebration. I didn't even bother to argue. I found an envelope, folded a single dollar bill inside it, and on a small note, I simply wrote, "We will not be attending." I dropped it in the mail, and the sound of the mailbox door slamming shut felt like the final snap of a chain I had been dragging my whole life. But that $1 was a declaration of war. 2 days later, a police car was parked in my driveway. My father was standing beside the officer, his arms crossed over his chest, his face a cold mask of disappointment. In that moment, I knew this was far from over. What they would do next would push me to a place I never thought I would go, and this time, I was not going to let them walk all over us. Has your family ever let you down in a way that truly mattered, especially when it involved your kids? Let me know your story in the comments below. I'm reading them. And stay with me, because what happened after that police car showed up changed absolutely everything. Once the initial shock of their betrayal began to fade, I couldn't stop myself from looking back at how we had arrived at this point. Growing up in Denver, I was always cast as the supporting character in my own family's narrative. My brother, Mark, was the star, the one into whom they poured all of their hopes and dreams. I can't recall a time when it was any different. He was given everything he could ever want, and I learned to make do with the leftovers. My mother, Eleanor, was the architect of this entire dynamic. She possessed an almost magical talent for bending every situation to her will, making anyone who dared to challenge her feel small and deeply ungrateful. When I was struggling to pay for night classes at the local community college, she simply dismissed my worries, saying that they had to prioritize saving money for Mark's future. He, of course, was given a full-ride scholarship, all of his expenses paid, and they even bought him a car to get to and from his prestigious university. I was working late shifts at a coffee shop, desperately trying to balance my coursework with paying my bills, my own ambitions feeling like an afterthought to theirs. It wasn't long before they purchased a condo for him in a trendy part of Denver, calling it a smart investment. The best thing I ever received was a secondhand laptop for my studies. My father, Richard, was no better. He was a passive observer, never once questioning my mother's decisions. He would just nod his head and sign the checks for whatever Mark wanted or needed. If I ever brought up the blatant unfairness of it all, he would just offer a weak shrug and say, "That's just how things are." It was a constant stinging pain, but it only fueled my determination to succeed without their help. I taught myself how to code, fighting my way into Denver's competitive tech industry. Every late night I spent studying, every job application that was rejected, and every small victory I achieved was entirely my own. Mark, on the other hand, just accepted their devotion as something he was owed. He never seemed to notice the favoritism or see me struggling. They bankrolled his various business ideas and his flashy lifestyle, while I was carefully budgeting every dollar to build a life for myself and my son. At family dinners, my mother would go on and on about his latest brilliant idea, while my own career milestones barely earned a polite nod. It was about more than just the money. They controlled the entire narrative, shaping every single conversation to ensure that I always remembered my place. The one person who saw through all of it was my Aunt Claire. She was different, quiet, observant, and completely immune to my mother's manipulations. At family get-togethers, she would find a moment to pull me aside and whisper, "You're so much stronger than they even realize." Her words were a lifeline in a vast sea of invisibility. She lived on the other side of town and wisely kept her distance from the constant drama, but I always knew that she was in my corner. Looking back now, I can see the invisible threads they used to keep me tied to them. They would guilt me into organizing family events or helping with projects for Mark, all while completely ignoring my own needs. I remember one time asking for a small loan to cover an unexpected medical bill for my son. My mother claimed they were completely stretched thin after buying Mark a new sports car. I ended up working double shifts to pay it off myself, and the resentment just simmered deep inside me. It was a constant emotional manipulation, making me feel indebted to them simply for being part of the family. Every gathering was a performance. My mother directing, my father agreeing, and Mark soaking up all of the applause. I was the stagehand, cleaning up after everyone and playing the role of the dutiful daughter, while they planned his next big success. Slowly but surely, the pattern became undeniable. They dangled their approval just out of my reach, keeping me in a constant state of trying to earn it. But you can only be pushed so far. Each dismissal, each casual slight, added more fuel to a fire that was growing inside me. I moved out, found my own place in Denver, and poured all of my energy into raising my son. I was determined that he would grow up knowing that he was valuable, that his worth wasn't dependent on anyone else's validation. Still, a small part of me held on to hope. Maybe one day they would change. Maybe they would finally see me. That hope died on my son's birthday. It wasn't just about a missed party. It was the culmination of a lifetime of being sidelined and told that I didn't matter. Sending that $1 bill wasn't just an act of defiance. It was me drawing a line in the sand. I was done with their games. The real shock, however, was discovering that they weren't done with me. What they did next pushed me to a breaking point I never saw coming. While my brother had a life handed to him on a silver platter, I was building mine from the ground up. Denver's tech scene was thriving, but I started at the very bottom. I had no fancy degree, no influential connections, just a fierce determination to create a good life for my son and me. I'd always had a knack for puzzles, so I decided to teach myself how to code. I'd sit hunched over a used laptop long after Leo was asleep, stealing precious hours from my own rest. Online tutorials and coding forums became my university, and every line of code I wrote felt like a step toward independence. I juggled shifts at a coffee shop, daycare drop-offs, and those late-night study sessions. My eyes were always burning with fatigue, but my will never wavered. My family never once offered to help. My parents poured all their resources into my brother Mark, buying him a brand new car to celebrate his first business venture, a startup they funded without a second thought. I was still taking the bus across Denver, carefully budgeting every single dollar for Leo's school supplies. When I finally landed my first freelance coding project, I called my mother, naively hoping for a word of encouragement. She quickly brushed it aside, saying that Mark's latest deal was the real exciting news. That dismissal hurt more than I let on, but I channeled that pain into more motivation. The rejections were tough. Tech companies were wary of a self-taught single mother, but the grind of Denver's startup culture rewards hustle. I networked in coffee shops, pitched my skills at local meetups, and slowly, painstakingly, built a portfolio of my work. Every contract I won felt like a monumental victory, concrete proof that I could succeed without their validation. The sound of Leo's laughter in our tiny apartment was my fuel. his unwavering belief in me a louder force than their deafening silence. All the while, my parents continued to finance my brother's every whim. They paid the lease for his downtown office space, funded his flashy marketing campaigns, and my mother was his unpaid full-time publicist. When his business supposedly needed more stability, they even bought him that condo. I only asked for their help once, for a small loan to cover Leo's preschool tuition. My father told me they were stretched thin because of Mark's latest project. I took on extra gigs, covered the cost myself, and made a silent promise that I would never ask them for anything again. The contrast was stark and painful. They would attend Mark's ribbon-cutting ceremonies, beaming for the cameras, while my own achievements were met with one-word texts, if anything at all. My mother once called my coding cute, as if it were a quaint little hobby and not the career that was single-handedly lifting us out of debt. Their favoritism wasn't just about money, it was a profound emotional neglect, a constant painful reminder that in their eyes, I was lesser. Despite it all, I kept pushing forward. A local tech startup eventually took a chance on me and hired me full-time, impressed by my tenacity. I moved us into a better apartment with a view of the Denver skyline, a view that served as a daily reminder of how far I'd climbed. Leo started elementary school, and I finally began to save, determined to build a life they could never take credit for. Yet, their indifference still had the power to sting. I remember one family dinner where they toasted Mark's genius while I quietly cleared the dinner plates, completely invisible. My Aunt Claire, sitting at the end of the table, caught my eye and later slipped me a note that said, "You're doing everything right." Her quiet faith was a balm to my soul. I thought I could maintain a fragile peace, to stay connected for Leo's sake, despite their constant slights. I kept calling them, inviting them to Leo's school plays and soccer games, hoping they would finally show up. They rarely did, always having an excuse related to Mark's busy schedule, his business trips, his galas. His needs always came first. I swallowed the hurt each time, telling myself that the life I was building for us was stronger than their neglect. My career flourished and my confidence grew, but their rejection left deep scars. I wasn't chasing their approval anymore, but a part of me couldn't completely let go. I wanted my son to have a family, to know something beyond their coldness. That lingering hope was what kept me tethered to them, even as their blatant favoritism continued to fester. When their next move came, I was finally ready to fight back. The consequence of sending that single dollar was more immediate and severe than I could have imagined. My doorbell rang 2 days later. Standing on my porch was my father, Richard, and beside him stood a Denver police officer. My father's expression was one of stern disapproval. The officer, his badge catching the light, held up the very envelope I had mailed, the one with the lone dollar inside. My dad had called them, claiming I had sent it to publicly humiliate my mother, Eleanor, and was accusing me of harassment. My heart started to race, but I forced my voice to remain calm. I explained that it was my response to their demand for $2,000, which came right after they had failed to show up for my son's birthday. I pulled out my phone and showed the officer my mother's text message, her cold, transactional demand for money for Mark's wedding. He read the text, gave a slight, almost imperceptible nod, and handed the envelope back to me. "This is a family issue, ma'am," he said, tipping his hat before turning to leave. My father stood there for a beat, a silent wall of judgment, then turned and walked away without uttering a single word. I foolishly thought that might be the end of their retaliation, but my family was just getting started. A few weeks later was the school's annual bake sale and fair. I was there, cheering as Leo participated in the sack race, his small legs hopping across the grass field. The air was filled with the happy sounds of families laughing and kids shouting. Then I saw them. My mother and my brother, Mark, were making their way through the crowd, stopping to whisper to parents and teachers. I couldn't hear everything, but I caught words like selfish, ungrateful, and bad mother. My stomach clenched as I saw a teacher's friendly expression falter as her eyes flicked in my direction. They were poisoning my reputation right here, in my son's community. I tried to ignore it, to focus on the games, clapping loudly as Leo crossed the finish line. But the whispers were like a virus, spreading quickly. A parent I barely knew came up to me and asked if it was true that I had abandoned my family. I managed a tight smile and said it was a simple misunderstanding, but inside, a cold fury was building. They had taken their personal vendetta public, turning my son's happy day into a stage for their malicious gossip. After the event, I spotted them in the parking lot. My mother's voice was loud and performative as she recounted to another parent how I had disrespected her with that dollar. My brother stood beside her, nodding with a smug look on his face. That was my breaking point. I marched straight over to them, my heart pounding in my chest. "You skipped my son's birthday, demanded money, and now you're here spreading lies about me," I said, my voice clear and loud enough for others to hear. My mother's eyes narrowed. "You're the one tearing this family apart," she hissed, her voice dripping with venom. Mark chimed in, accusing me of being jealous, claiming I had always resented his success. But I didn't flinch. "You don't get to rewrite history," I shot back. I reminded them of their cruel absence when my son just wanted his grandparents there, of their endless financial demands while offering me nothing but judgment. Other parents had started to notice, their conversations quieting. A teacher took a step closer, her face etched with concern, but my eyes were locked on my mother and brother. Eleanor tried to cut me off, but I raised my voice, finally laying bare the years of favoritism and neglect, how they had propped up my brother while leaving me to struggle on my own. Mark's smugness began to crack. He looked visibly uncomfortable. A small crowd had now gathered, and murmurs rippled through the parking lot. I didn't care anymore. I was done being their villain. "You want to talk about family?" I said, my voice shaking with raw emotion. "Family shows up. Family doesn't lie." My mother's face went crimson with rage, but she had no comeback. My brother muttered something under his breath and quickly pulled her toward their car. They sped off, leaving me standing there, my hands trembling but my spine made of steel. I thought that public confrontation would be the final word, but their retaliation was only just beginning. When their next scheme directly targeted my son, I knew I had no choice but to protect him at all costs. When the school called, my world tilted. The secretary's voice was strained as she told me a woman identifying herself as my son's grandmother had shown up, demanding to take him home early. I knew in my gut it was my mother, Eleanor. She had crossed a line I never dreamed she would. I raced to the school, my mind a storm of worst-case scenarios. I found her in the front office arguing with the principal. Her voice was sharp and entitled as she insisted on her right to see her grandchild. The principal, thankfully, was holding firm, explaining that school policy required my explicit consent. I walked in, my voice dangerously calm despite the tremor in my hands. "You have no business being here," I told her. She shot me a venomous glare, accusing me of trying to turn my own son against his family, but the principal calmly escorted her off the school premises. That evening, my phone rang with an unknown number. I answered, and it was her. Eleanor's voice was like ice. Before I could say a word, she said something I'll never forget, speaking loudly enough for my son, who was nearby, to hear. "You don't want to end up with a selfish mother like her, do you, Leo?" My son's eyes widened in confusion and hurt. I snatched the phone, ended the call, and blocked her number without a second thought. My stomach was in knots. She had intentionally used my child as a weapon to wound me. I immediately called the police and reported her attempt to take my son from school and the harassing phone call. They filed an official report, took note of the school's security incident, and advised me to formally update all emergency contact lists. The very next morning, I was at the school, ensuring that only I or a few trusted friends were authorized to pick Leo up. My mother's stunt had ignited a new kind of fire in me. This was no longer just about my feelings. It was about protecting my child's safety and well-being. I reached out to my Aunt Claire, the one person in my family who had always seen the truth. She answered on the first ring, her voice calm and resolute. "I've been waiting for this," she said. "It's time to fight back." Together, we started to look into my parents' finances. We both suspected that the $2,000 wedding fee was more than just an outrageous demand. Aunt Claire was meticulous. Over the years, she had quietly saved things: emails, receipts, notes from conversations. She sent me a digital folder filled with documents, and in it was an email exchange between my mother and a wedding vendor. The figures were all wrong. There were inflated invoices and records of payments being routed to questionable accounts. Late into the night, I sat in my Denver apartment, the glow of my laptop lighting up the room, and I pieced it all together. One email was particularly damning: a vendor confirming they had received a deposit for consulting services that weren't listed on any official invoice. Another document revealed my mother directing funds from a joint account into an account linked to my brother Mark's failing business. The pattern of deceit was undeniable. This wasn't just about controlling me. It was about fraud. I found a lawyer and shared everything we had uncovered. She confirmed our suspicions. We had more than enough evidence to build a strong legal case. Aunt Claire continued her quiet investigation, unearthing more and more financial inconsistencies, her determination a perfect match for my own. One evening, Leo came to me, his expression sad. "Why don't Grandma and Grandpa want to see me anymore?" he asked, his voice small and full of genuine confusion. My heart shattered into a million pieces. I knelt down to his level, keeping my voice steady. "Sometimes, honey, grown-ups make choices that are hard to understand," I told him, pulling him into a tight hug. "But it has nothing to do with you. You are so loved. You have me, and I will always, always be here for you." I reminded him of all the good in our life: our weekend trips to the park, the coding games we played together, the constant laughter that filled our home. His smile returned, a little hesitant but real. I swore to myself that he would grow up free from their poison. My lawyer warned me that exposing their fraud would be a long, difficult battle, but every new document we found made our case stronger. My aunt and I operated in secret, knowing that if my parents or brother got wind of what we were doing, they would retaliate in an even more vicious way. Their desperate attempt to take my son from school wasn't just a power play, it was a sign of how cornered they were. But I was done being afraid. As their web of lies began to unravel, I was ready to tear it down completely. By the time the lights were set to glitter at my brother's wedding, I had my own plan in motion. The opulence of the Denver venue, a grand hall dripping with chandeliers, was a perfect, sickening backdrop for the deceit my aunt and I were about to expose. Armed with a mountain of emails, bank statements, and falsified invoices, I filed a lawsuit against my parents, accusing them of financial misconduct and fraud directly tied to their $2,000 per-person wedding demand. My lawyer, a sharp and relentless woman, presented our evidence to the court: the inflated vendor contracts, the suspicious bank transfers, and the smoking gun: an email from my mother explicitly directing funds into my brother's struggling business account. The truth was stark and undeniable. They had been using the wedding as a front to skim money. I also took a step they never saw coming. I contacted a local Denver journalist I knew from my tech networking circles. She immediately saw the power in the story, diving deep into the paper trail I provided. A few days later, it happened. A front-page article hit the newsstands with a headline that read, "Family Wedding or Financial Fraud." The story laid out the whole scheme, detailing how my parents had inflated wedding costs to secretly funnel money to their son. The story exploded on social media. Locals were outraged, contrasting the extravagance of the wedding venue with their manipulative money grab. The article quoted an anonymous source close to the family, hinting at years of favoritism, and I knew it was only a matter of time before someone on the inside cracked. That someone turned out to be my brother. He called me late one night, his voice strained and quiet. I didn't know how far she was taking it, he confessed, admitting he had been completely blindsided by our mother's scheming. He had trusted her to handle the wedding finances, only to discover she had been using his special day to cover up her fraudulent dealings. Furious at being made a fool and a pawn, he forwarded me an entire chain of emails, irrefutable proof of our mother directing vendors to create fake invoices for kickbacks. "I'm done being their puppet," he said, the regret in his voice thick and heavy. I didn't know if I could fully trust him, but those emails were solid gold. They made our legal case airtight. In court, my lawyer presented this new evidence, laying out a clear, calculated pattern of deceit. The judge, visibly unimpressed by my parents' flustered and contradictory defense, issued a preliminary restraining order that barred them from contacting me or my son. My mother's face was a mask of pure outrage as she stormed out of the courtroom, my father trailing silently behind her. My brother didn't show up, but his emails had spoken volumes. That court order felt like a shield, a legal barrier finally protecting my son from their toxic reach. The fallout was immediate and catastrophic for them. What was supposed to be the social event of the season turned into a public scandal. Guests started whispering about the article, and vendors, worried about payment, began pulling out. My parents desperately tried to spin the story, claiming I had fabricated everything out of jealousy, but the evidence was too strong. My aunt, my steadfast ally through it all, sent me a simple text: "You turned their own game against them." Her words were a powerful reminder of what I was fighting for. I knew my parents wouldn't give up easily. Their pride was shattered, and I was sure they would strike back. The victory in court was a massive turning point, but it came at a high cost. My son, though too young to grasp the legal details, could feel the tension. I kept him close, shielding him from the gossip that was now swirling through Denver's tight-knit communities. My mission was to protect him, not just from their schemes, but from the heartbreak of watching his family implode. The lawsuit was never about the money. It was about severing the chains of their control. With their perfect family facade now crumbling for all to see, their next attack was about to go digital. After the wedding collapsed under the weight of the scandal, they took their war online. My mother, Eleanor, launched a full-scale assault on Facebook, posting long, rambling tirades that painted me as a vindictive, hateful daughter who had intentionally sabotaged her own brother's wedding. Her posts were dripping with manufactured victimhood, accusing me of fabricating lies about their finances just to destroy the family. My father, Richard, became her echo on Twitter, retweeting her attacks and adding his own commentary, like, "Some children forget the people who raised them." The comment section became a cesspool. Distant relatives I hadn't spoken to in years, old family friends and complete strangers all chimed in, calling me ungrateful and cruel. My phone buzzed incessantly with notifications, each one a small, sharp jab at my peace of mind. Then the threats became direct. My mother sent me a private message demanding I pay the $2,000 wedding fee to make this right. She wrote, "Send the money, or you are no longer my daughter." My father followed up with a text, warning me that I would be cut off for good if I didn't fall in line. Their words still had the power to hurt, but I was no longer the scared little girl who craved their approval. I took a deep breath, took screenshots of everything, every public post, every private message, and forwarded them all to my lawyer. This had moved far beyond a family disagreement. It was a documented, calculated campaign of harassment and intimidation. I made the conscious choice to remain silent online. I refused to engage, to defend myself in the court of public opinion. My Aunt Claire called, her voice a beacon of calm in the storm. "They're just digging their own graves, Sarah," she said, reminding me to stay focused on the legal process. We already had an ironclad case for the fraud, and my brother's emails had sealed their fate. In our next court appearance, my lawyer presented the social media posts and threatening messages as evidence of ongoing harassment. She methodically laid it all out, projecting screenshots of my mother's vicious accusations onto the courtroom screen. My parents sat on the other side of the room, their composure finally cracking under the weight of their own words. The judge's ruling was swift and decisive. She issued a permanent restraining order, legally prohibiting my parents and my brother from contacting me or my son in any way. In her decision, the judge cited their clear pattern of intimidation and their ongoing financial deceit. Her voice was firm, leaving no room for ambiguity. My mother's eyes blazed with impotent rage, but my father just stared at the floor, defeated. My brother, once again absent from the hearing, had already vanished from our lives, his engagement and wedding canceled amidst the public humiliation. The grand ballroom they had booked stood empty, a silent, hollow monument to their collapsed kingdom of lies. The consequences were brutal and final. My parents' reputations, already in tatters from the newspaper article, were completely destroyed. My mother's employer, a local nonprofit, let her go after donors began raising questions about her integrity. My father, a small-time consultant, lost most of his clients, who had seen the chaos unfold online. Their social circle evaporated. The phone calls stopped. The invitations dried up. My brother, humiliated and broke, retreated from public life, his business ventures crumbling without my parents' illicit funding. I felt no joy in their downfall. That was never the point. All I had ever wanted was to protect my son and free us from their toxic grip. My aunt sent me a message that night. It just said, "You stood your ground." Her simple words steadied me, a reminder that I hadn't been alone in the fight. I shielded my son from the online tempest, deleting social media apps from our shared devices to spare him from the cruelty. When he asked why we didn't see Grandma anymore, I told him the simple truth, that some people choose to hold on to anger instead of love, but that we would always have each other. He nodded, a quiet understanding in his eyes, and for me, that was enough. The legal victory was like a deep, cleansing breath, even if the scars were still there. The Denver rumor mill eventually found something new to churn about. I poured my energy into my work, my son, and the peaceful, quiet life we were finally able to build. Their online attacks had spectacularly backfired, exposing their desperation to the world. I had won more than just a court case. I had won back my peace. Once their venom finally faded, a profound quiet settled over my life. Our small Denver apartment, its walls now covered in Leo's colorful drawings, became our sanctuary, a fortress built against the storm we had weathered. I had climbed the ladder at my tech company, earning a promotion to software engineering manager. My days were now filled with leading a team, solving complex architectural problems, and mentoring young coders who, like me, were hungry and self-taught, eager to make their mark. The panoramic view of the skyline from my new office window was a constant, tangible reminder of how far we had come, from barely scraping by to building a life entirely on our own terms. As for my parents and brother, they receded into the background, lost in the wreckage of their own making. My mother, Eleanor, and my father, Richard, struggled financially after losing their jobs. Their once vibrant social life had withered. Neighbors would cross the street to avoid them, and family gatherings, I heard, became tense and silent affairs. My brother, his wedding plans obliterated, had withdrawn completely. His business ideas, once propped up by my parents' schemes, had all failed. I learned through my Aunt Claire that they were now living a much more modest life, their days of lavish spending and social climbing reduced to bitter memories. I never wished for their suffering, but their absence was a profound relief. Leo eventually stopped asking about them. His world was rich and full, packed with school projects, soccer practice, and friends. My aunt remained my rock. Our regular coffee dates a steady source of comfort and a reminder of what true loyalty felt like. "You built this life, Sarah," she'd often say, her smile gentle and proud. "Not them." And I would nod. the truth of her words sinking in a little deeper each time. Leo and I found our own happy rhythm. We had weekend walks around the city park lake, we built little coding projects together before bed, and his laughter was the soundtrack to our lives, echoing in every corner of our home. The restraining order held, a silent legal wall that kept their shadows from ever touching us again. Looking back on it all, I learned some very hard truths about the nature of family. I learned that some bonds, no matter how they are defined by blood, are toxic, not sacred. Recognizing that truth and having the courage to act on it is what saved us. My parents and brother had chosen control over love, and their manipulation and deceit were a burden I finally refused to carry. Protecting my son was the compass that guided me through the darkest parts of the storm. Every single decision, from blocking their numbers to standing up to them in a courtroom, was for him. And in fighting for him, I found my own freedom. Every step I took on my own was proof that I never needed their approval to stand tall. To anyone out there listening who might be in a similar situation, I want to say this: you have to know when it's time to walk away. You can't set yourself on fire to keep others warm. True strength isn't about enduring endless pain. It's about having the courage to choose peace for yourself and for your children. It's about building a life where you are valued, not for what you can give, but for who you are. And that is a life worth fighting for.